Welcome to Childcare Conversations with Kate and Carrie.
Have you thought about your staff's accountability? Okay, Carrie, we have had people calling us talking about how people just don't work like they used to. And as an owner, as a manager, as a director, you just kind of go, "Ugh," and you'll put a label on it. Oh, that person who's 20 or that person who's 30, or they just don't know how to work anymore. But yet, we just came back from a conference a few weeks ago and we met folks who owned like everywhere from like 1 to 15 programs, right? And they've got their staff are showing up, their staff are working hard. I mean, and these are leaders that were empathetic. I mean, like they seem to genuinely care. What can we say? Where do we help our directors who are like, "Ugh, that's just who those people are. That's just
I
that
mean, I'm
age
going to say
demographic."
that people have been complaining about that since at least the ancient Greek times, because we have a skewed from, I think it was Aristotle, complaining about the youth these days and how they're just not willing to put in the time and the effort. So apparently, this has been a perceived problem for millennia. The thing is, I don't think it's real. I think that people of different times just approach things slightly differently. I don't know whatever it was, Aristotle or Plato or Socrates, whichever one of those three guys, they just trained each other. I don't know which one's which. I mean, I do, but I don't remember which one was the one who went off on kids these days. But I know how I learned to work as a Gen Xer, which was I started working when I was in single digits and I had expectations. And when I didn't meet them, I didn't get paid. A lot of people from my generation did that with mail routes or whatever. Not mail
Newspaper
routes,
routes,
paper routes.
or I don't know.
Mowing people's yards in the neighborhood.
Well, even if they were working to be able to go to camp, right? If you don't sell your Girl Scout cookies, you don't get to go to camp,
Yeah, absolutely.
right?
And so my generation was, or our generation was working from a very young age, and we worked, I'm sure we were given allowances because to, be a little bit less intense than the adult cohorts that we worked with. But we had, you have to do this or you don't get paid. Why? And then the next generation would be the millennials. Is that right? So
I can't keep them all track. I can't. No,
I
that's
think
why.
I
That's
think
why I
the
didn't.
millennials
That's why I
are,
didn't label anybody. I just said, that age group.
but so there was, different generations have grown up with different expectations about chores at home, about when to get a job. Like I know that my nephews and nieces who are whatever generation is currently just starting college, they weren't expected to have a job in high school. As a matter of fact, they were told that they should not have a job in high school so that they would be better prepared for college. I don't understand it. Talk to my sister-in-law. But so there we have just different approaches to what's important and what the work-life balance should be. I think the desire of people to have a more flexible work life is actually a good thing. I know it's annoying to us as managers because we're like, no, 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 you're supposed to work. I tell you what the shift is, and you start, you're the opener, so you show up at 6:30, and that means that you work until 2, and that's your shift. And then when people are like, well, could I come from like 6:30 to 8:30 and then like go and eat breakfast and then come back? And you're like, what? No, eat breakfast before 6:30. And they're like, I can't eat when I first wake up. And you're just like, figure it out. But that's not, like, if you objectively think about it, if they ate their dinner at 9 o'clock, like a lot of young adults do, should they be eating breakfast at 5 a.m.? Probably not. Their body needs some time to process. So I don't know. I've just kind of gone on a rabbit trail here of
Okay, well,
saying
let's talk
different
about why this.
attitudes are fine.
Well, let's talk about why this topic. So, I don't know if a lot of our directors and owners who listen to our podcast are people who are aware of business trends in other industries or
True.
just business trends or leadership trends in general. So, one of the things that we wanted to try to start to add to the podcast this year was this is what's happening in all industries or a lot of industries.
In other industries.
In other industries. There we go. In other industries, what can we learn from it? How does that apply to potentially new staff or leadership? It's definitely going to affect the buzzwords that you're going to hear if you go to, and hopefully you are networking at your local chamber of commerce, your local business organizations, right? If you're not already part of that, add that as your action plan this week, okay? So, leadership with accountability, but also empathy. And I think this is perfect for childcare. It is perfect for women who are in leadership roles. But, I know one of the things that I always struggled with, especially when I started in the field, and every time we've seen new directors come in, is that directors aren't trained to be leaders.
Frequently, yeah. That's
We
part
were
of why
often
company,
right.
because we think that directors should be trained, not just promoted and gone, here's your new job description. Like they should have at least a week's worth of training. Please give them at least a week's worth of training into how to do this job. So we want them to be accountable, but we have to have some empathy around what are their challenges with that? How can we help them through that? We don't live in an economy where we have 20% unemployment. So if this person doesn't work out, I can take another one in. Also, that's kind of a cruddy way to treat your employees, that they're just replaceable cogs in a factory. Your employees aren't a replaceable cog in the factory. So how do we show empathy and how do we hold them accountable? And it comes back to one of my favorite conversations, which is the uncomfortable conversation. I am a big believer in having those uncomfortable conversations and saying, hey, I've noticed that you haven't closed any of the tours you've done this week. What's going on?
Well, the other thing that,
yeah,
as I said, the other thing
do
though,
a good job.
Yeah, the other thing that I think is a real issue is sometimes we aren't being super clear during job description writing, during interviews, during hiring, during onboarding. I mean, a client I have right
Are
now.
you supposed? But a lot of times they also don't onboard when they promote somebody from one job to the next. The person got an onboarding when they were hired as a floater 7 years ago. Have you done an orientation with them in the last 7 years as they've gone from floater to assistant director? Like they should have had 3 or 4 other orientations and onboardings during that process.
Well, we have a client right now who has literally had 11 staff worth of turnover in less than 2 months.
That's a lot. That's a problem that says onboarding and hiring is not being done appropriately.
Yeah, when I asked them for their onboarding plan, basically they gave me a checklist of all of the forms they needed.
That's not onboarding.
Yeah. So if this is your version of onboarding, folks, if you are hearing this, first of all, go back and listen to some of our other episodes. But it's really hard to keep your staff accountable if they don't know what they're supposed to do. And you should only be so empathetic if they're not doing their job, right? Like we all have our bad days, but if they aren't getting it, right? Like have you trained them? And did you actually make it clear to them?
So I think there's a difference between empathy and being walked over. So to me, empathy is, hey, I noticed, we're going to take that example. I noticed you haven't closed any tours this week. Nobody that you toured has enrolled. What's going on with that? We have our difficult conversation. And when they say, well, my dog ate my cat and then a tree fell on my house and also the muffler just fell off of my car. Then you say, why didn't you bring to me that you were having a hard week and could I take up some slack? Because if you had told me even one of those three things, I would have said, hey, I think you need some time to process. Why don't you do file updates and I'll take the tours? So that is being empathetic and holding them accountable, because they should have conveyed to the other people on their team that they're having a rough week. Because everybody, well, not everybody, most people are empathetic when you say, I'm having a rough week, and they're willing to pitch in and change job duties for the week while you deal with the fact that your cat just, no, your dog ate your cat, not your cat ate your dog. Anyway, people are empathetic and they're willing to make that change. But if you don't tell anybody that you're having a hard time and you're just dropping balls left, right, and center, that is not your supervisor's job to be empathetic at that point. At that point, the supervisor is supposed to go, okay, well, it sounds to me like your life is blowing up, and I'm going to give you a week off without pay to take care of that.
Okay, but let's
If
think
you
this
don't know
through.
what that is, that you just got suspended.
Okay, so let's think about this though, because most of the people listening are the directors. So, how, as a director, can I be empathetic and hold my staff accountable? Like, how do I start this process? Because if I was just a teacher, if I was a lead teacher, I've been a lead teacher for 5 years, I've had lots of training, 30 to 40 hours every year. I've got 200 hours of training on how to be an awesome lead teacher. And I got promoted. And now I have all these staff that used to be my friends. What can I do? How do I set that expectation?
I mean, if they're in that situation right now, you have to figure out what your boundaries are going to be. What are the things that drive you bananas that did not drive the last director bananas? Because people on staff are still working under the assumption that that thing is the thing that's a problem, where for you, maybe the last director's thing was that every room needed to be ready for military inspection at the end of your shift. And for you, you're like, I don't care if you do the cleaning morning or night. It just needs to be done once a day. But your thing is, you need to arrange your substitute if you're going to be out for the day. And that's the thing that bugs you, is when people call in at 4 a.m. saying they're not going to be there for the 6:30 open shift. If that's so, okay, that is one of mine. So for me, that would be something I would make sure everybody on staff knew. This is something that is a big deal to me. And if you want to continue to have my respect, you need to do this. And then one-on-one meetings with each of the staff, one-on-ones with everyone on staff, going over your expectations for them, that whole accountability and empathy, and say, and these are the kinds of things I can help with. And this is how we're going to work well together. You've got to do those things and say, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, in 4 years, what would your ideal life be 4 years from now? So you've got to have those conversations with each of your employees. Now, if they've been in the director position for 2 years and nobody told them to have one-on-ones, is it too late, Kate, to do the one-on-ones when they're 2 years into directing?
Never. Because you know what? You can say, I listened to this podcast of these two women and they were a little crazy, and this is what I think I want to do. Or you heard it from a workshop, or, you read it in a book. It is okay. And actually, I think lends credibility to a director who says these kinds of references, because then you're telling your staff that you're constantly learning, you want to get better in your job. And you know what? Maybe you didn't do it perfect. As parents, we went through that a lot, right? Like, what we thought we were supposed to do with the first teenager is maybe not what we did with the last teenager. And as somebody with 4 of them, I got 4 tries.
Yeah.
Still not sure I did
only
it right.
got 2. I only got 2 at bats. So
But someday you might have teenage, grandchildren. So, right? Like, so you're going to get maybe another shot.
we'll see. But you have a chance every day to be a better director for your staff. Every day you can be a better director. And so we want to hold them to account. We want them to be the best versions of themselves. And I hear people so often say, well, I can't write them up for that because then they'll just quit. Is that the only tool in your toolbox? Is writing people up? If that's the only tool you have, you got to get Kate or I on as a coach or a consultant, because you need to have like 27 tools, not just if the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. You've got to have different tools available. So yeah, maybe you can't write them up because that's a dumb thing to do. Have a conversation with them about what's going on and saying, you know what? I'm looking at your last paycheck and I had scheduled you for 12 days and you were only here for the entire shift, 7 of those 12 days. Do you know that I got to keep X hundreds of dollars because I didn't pay it to you because you didn't show up on time? That's a very different conversation than I'm writing you up for your third absence. That's a different tool. This is how much money you could have earned if you had shown up every day and worked your whole shift.
Yeah, those are the same ones, Carrie, that also go, can I get a raise or can I work more hours? And you're like, can you just work the ones you got?
Can I get an advance? Yeah, I know. So have the conversation about this is how much money you left on the table because of your poor attendance policy. And, don't say your poor attendance policy. Say because, if you'd worked your full shift every time. So what's going on? Why do you not want this $500? Well, I do want the $500. You're saying you want it, but your behavior isn't showing that. So we're holding them accountable and we're being empathetic. We're not saying, I think you're a dumbass. Sorry, no, it's not a childcare word, but that's the word that came into my head. We're not saying that. We're not saying that we think that you're a lazy, no good so-and-so because you can't get to work on time. Instead, we're being empathetic and saying, why do you not want this money? Like, what is going on in your life that you can't get here at this time? Do we need to change your shift? What do we need to do?
Absolutely. Well, hopefully you have gotten a couple of ideas of what it means to be accountable or to keep your staff
accountable and be empathetic. Kate can't talk today. That's usually my job.
I'm like, apparently not. But you know what I can say? If you've enjoyed the show, share it with someone who should know, right? Did I get that right? And we do have fan mail. So if you would like to drop us a question, if you go to buzzsprout.com and you search Childcare Conversations, they actually have a button that says fan mail, and we just love it. You can also find it by going to www.childcareconversations.com. There, the very first button that says listen to our podcast, that'll take you to fan mail. You can also apply to be a guest. If you've noticed over the last couple of months, we have increased our guests on this show. We have gotten some great positive feedback from our listeners. We hope that you will consider being a guest on our podcast. We'd love to hear how you want to inspire the next generation of early childcare leaders.
Talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to Childcare Conversations with Kate and Carrie. Want to learn more? Check out our website at texasdirector.org. And if you've learned anything today, leave us a comment below and share the show.